So thanks a lot, Tomasz, for this staying here. I will start introducing myself a bit, and then I would love for you to also share your experience and also for our users to get to know you better. So my name is Stephanie Oliveros. I work as a product manager in Wired. I'm a psychologist, and also I'm one of the leads in this DLaw project. And the idea with this is basically to bring closer the technological innovation of these tools to people so we can democratize legal services for everyone. And this is why for us is key to have opinions from professionals like yourself. So I'm very excited to having this conversation, and I would love to meet you a little bit further. So please introduce yourself.
Thank you. So Tomasz Krzywanski, I am the attorney at law, allowed to practice law in Poland. Professionally, what I do is I mainly work with high net worth professionals, supporting them with the administration of their wealth. I also do tax planning, international tax planning for my clients, and succession planning. So the transfer of wealth between generations. That's kind of it. I've been practicing law for the last 12 years. For the last few years, also as a partner in one big firm in Warsaw. Now I have my own practice, so I'm building my own firm at the moment.
Amazing. Thank you, Tomasz, and congratulations also for your entrepreneurial movement now. So, right, so I think it's going to be very interesting to know your opinion from the specialization that you have chosen, which is with the taxation and also like transferring I guess like properties or inheritance and these issues. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit further about what's your day-to-day like before we start with this subject per se?
All right. So my day-to-day work comprises of a lot of human interactions. So I am kind of a main contact for my clients, kind of their trust advisor. So I do a lot of calls with my clients and just helping them on various aspects. But I do also a lot of reorganization of their wealth, their structures, their companies, for instance. So every day I also have a lot of brainstorming. Such brainstorming also requires to do a lot of kind of creating process. So a whiteboard is one of my best friends, kind of.
Course.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And a lot of calls with lawyers from other countries, checking legal systems in other countries, verifying these at least basic concepts, how we can, because it's all the time working with these small puzzles and trying to put everything together, which is kind of what I really love in my job. That you kind of still feel like having these puzzles in place and trying to match these puzzles one with another.
Absolutely. In certain way, you are some sort of investigator, right? So you're trying to find the different clues and how to fit with each other. And I think that it's a great way of defining just a tiny part of what law is, because it's so broad and has so many aspects and layers. And one of these layers is decentralized law. So maybe considering the definition of this decentralized law, how do you think it differs from traditional legal services?
So I would say that traditional law is very much based on what is in the books, based and also very much on what one human or the other human does. And DeLaw is very much about automation of processes and automation of decision taking and dispute resolution. So what I think is the key difference is that maybe perhaps there's just less human in it, which is not necessarily a bad thing after all.
Yeah, exactly. So what is changing then? How do you see that? What are the impacts that DeLaw is having right now, and what are the changes that this is proposing?
So I would say that I would compare it to the situation with the elevators in the 19th century. So like in the 19th century, what you had, each elevator has the elevator operator. So somebody who was simply making sure that the elevator goes up and down. What's happening at the moment, and at some point in time, of course, the buttons were introduced and the elevators starting going up and down their own. And I think this is kind of what's happening now with the application of the law. So we no longer need these elevator operators to apply the law, understand it, because you have these buttons to push. And that's what's just happening at the moment. It's getting just more like an app on your phone that you can turn on, and it will solve your problem or deal with certain stuff. It's also for me as a lawyer, this is exactly the case. So things that were kind of more time consuming in the past now are just turning up to be easier, faster, smoother than they used to be.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just nailed it with that analogy of the elevator. And I think it's precisely what is happening, right? So it's a way of transforming and evolving what it used to be something maybe tedious to leave space for people to also have some power in their hands, and also for lawyers to have more space for brainstorming and whiteboards as well, rather than, like all the day-to-day transactions. So going into that, maybe you can tell me some real-world applications for decentralized law.
So the first real-world application that comes to my mind is this startup from Spain. Actually, I think it's called JobChain, and I think a few years ago, what JobChain tried to do was really to apply DLaw to freelance contracts. So to make a space where freelancers could easily deliver their job and making sure that they will get paid. And I think this is one of these applications which on wider scale also other startups are trying to do. And this is one of these areas where it is really, really needed to make sure that the freelancers will get paid for their job, and also to create a system which will ultimately, if necessary, also decide a dispute whether the job was done or not, and decide it fast and easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And precisely, I was talking to one of, a colleague of yours, and they were telling me that one of the most common present issues in business is precisely conflict resolution. So, of course, like you may have multinationals with all the budget to arise disputes and to find mediators and to create an elaborate process to resolve these issues, but maybe startups, they don't have these resources. And even in the case of freelancers, it's even worse. So I'm finding in a statistic that recently shown that with alternative dispute resolution systems available, the trust can increase by 22% by both consumers and businesses as well. So that's quite significant. And we see it with online dispute resolution systems like Amazon has it, and even now the EU and different governments are implementing that as well. So how do you think then DDRS, so the dispute resolution system that's decentralized, can impact conflict resolution?
Well, I just think that at least in Poland, what we have at the moment is the situation where the courts are very much overburied with the number of cases to decide. I think it's probably the matter of the whole Europe, or not the world, but for sure that's what I can see here. And I would say that there's a number of cases that doesn't really have to be in the court, and there might probably be simpler methods of deciding this case, resolving this case, and I believe that DeLaw is exactly about it. So you have this big number of simple cases where having an independent kind of automatized third party would allow us to solve the case. And unless it is really complicated, or still there's an argument about the outcome, then I think that going to court is not necessarily like the human court. It's not really needed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always good to have that institutional support. But if you said like there are like a number of small claims that might be maybe too aggressive even for them to, oh, I'm going to initiate a dispute and spend all this money, and it's intimidating, you know?
Look, it's a little bit like with going to the doctor. So what we have in Poland is that you can also call your doctor on phone and talk through simple stuff, so that the doctor can advise you on some health issues. You don't have to make the appointment, and it saves a lot of time for the others who really need this face-to-face appointment with the doctor. I would say that with the judicial system is kind of the same. If you have some system that would allow to solve simple matters for most of the people, then there will be more time for these like big complex cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this highlights one of the main benefits of decentralized dispute resolution system. But I wonder about the challenges. So what do you think can be the biggest obstacles when implementing DeLaw?
So I think there are two, at least, that come to my mind. I think that first of all, well, that what we really need is this human touch, human oversight, after all, and there might be some issues where just a simple application of a legal regulation is not enough. And this is the difference between the natural law and the positive law. So sometimes what really matters is what is right and not what the law says exactly. And this is where the judge comes in and actually can make this fair assessment between what is right and what the law says, and tries to find the middle ground still within the border of the law. And I think this is what DeLaw might be struggling with. Yeah, that's one thing that comes to my mind. And I mean, the other kind of challenge, maybe not directly with the application of the DeLaw, but with the effects of the DeLaw, is that it will kind of affect my industry. And I'm not talking about kind of these old professionals who are established professionals, kind of, but are mostly about young lawyers. I think that what will change, what is already changing, is that young lawyers will simply have less space to learn, as in the past they used to learn doing simple things, where making a mistake was not that costly. And now you have less space for doing the not costly mistakes on simple things, because the simple things will be automated.
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that. I guess like as times change, there is also a space of adapting, but maybe things are changing so that in the pace that they are going now so fast, then it's gonna be a bit challenging to like to keep updated with this stuff. So yeah, those ethical considerations are something that I think we need to be careful with, and especially companies that are developing this type of technologies, to also think about how can we collaborate with the sector instead of competing with it. So like that, yeah. So considering these challenges, how do you think we can address them? So is there a way or a recommendation?
Um, in terms of young lawyers, I will follow this thread. What I think should change is actually the way they are educated, which is kind of a big challenge, of course.
Yeah,
Because what we will need, what I'm assuming will happen, we will need more legal analysts in the future and not necessarily legal advisors. So by legal analysts, I mean people who will be able to actually analyze the wording of the law, analyze the logic of the law, and combine it with the logic of blockchain, with the logic of figures, the
yeah,
logic of programming. I think this is the biggest challenge, and this
yeah.
is something that should be addressed to mitigate the effects of this big change that is happening.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think keeping informed, keeping in the loop is really key here. So trying to read more about it, to listen to videos like the one that we're creating right now, it can also really help, yeah, to understand a bit more what are the changes.
I am a big fan of the approach that one of the professors of economy, Professor Ethan Mollick from the Wharton School of Business School in Philadelphia, that's what he did. Actually, I was listening to one of his podcasts where he was kind of explaining how we nowadays works with his students, and he said nowadays everybody has access to large language models, so
Yeah,
everybody can do their homework. So it's not about the final effect, but it's about the prompt that they are using. And what he
yeah,
actually does, he asks his students to show him the prompts that they are using. And I think this is exactly what the lawyers should be taught. So show me your tools, show me how you got there,
yeah,
and not what the final effect is. I think the tools are
absolutely.
nowadays more important.
Yeah, it's not about the answer that you get, it's about the process and also
Yep.
having the critical thought of understanding if the answer is correct or not. And that I think that also uh, brings me some other questions, but maybe we can discuss that further in another time. But I was thinking, like, well, there is this psychological effect that when you receive an answer, you kind of like accept it as the truth instead of like really going into detail, and that can generate some mistakes at the end of the day. So that's why having a good prompt it's really important in here, and understanding also that the language model that you're using is the appropriate for the specific tasks that you're conducting.
Correct. I would say this is another big discussion about
Yeah,
the need for us to learn critical thinking.
yeah,
It's like learning how to use your mobile phone. We know how to use an app, but are we sure that this app actually works in a good way? Are we sure that this app, for instance, doesn't do us harm, doesn't collect too much data about us? We just should constantly think critically about what happens. And this is exactly what we should also apply to DLaw, I guess.
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And so this brings me to the question about the future. So we are seeing something that really feels like coming from a science fiction movie. It feels like magic. You're prompting something, even with DeLaw, which can be a little bit more complicated to understand because you are mixing blockchain technology with AI. So it's a little bit further. So I wonder, like, when you look ahead into the future, like, what do you see in the future of law in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, that's a very tough question. I'm not sure I have a good answer to it. What I see is that, as you said, that changes are happening so fast that well, look, 20 years ago when you 20 years ago when you wanted to do your research, you had to spend half of the day in the
Of
library.
course.
Now,
Yeah.
when you want to do a research, you spend half an hour on Google. So what I think is that probably in few years' time, it will be just half a minute, if not shorter, to get you answers. So I think this is what is already happening and will only speed up. But again, the real challenge is just to think critically about the results that you are getting, and this is where we should really pay attention. Not about I think about the new applications, the new tool that we are getting, because I would say we already have a lot around us. It's really about adapting how to use them more efficiently. That's the case, because think about the fact that like a few years ago, like 20 years, 30 years ago, you didn't have your laptop, you didn't have your cell phone, you didn't have internet everywhere, not to mention AI and so on and so forth. Now we have everything, and it's the question, are we taking the most of it or not?
Yeah, exactly. I think at the end of the day, more than the tools that you create is how you teach people of using it. So the awareness that you create, and also for sure, creating something that brings real value to the people. So, like you said, this is a really tough question. I don't really know what the future, in 5 or even 10 years, that's crazy to think. Whilst we see that AI is evolving literally every day, there is a new AI tool, there is a new amazing thing upcoming. But I think something that I can vouch for Viad is that they are really trying to accept the trend and go forward with this movement. So considering ethical implications, so working with lawyers and also thinking of the future. So like, how can we make sure that we create something that's sustainable and that people will use it? So I wonder, like, maybe in the future, governments will be a bit more open about these other like third parties or decentralized organizations to let people score these small claims that we were talking about at the beginning by themselves before going into court or stuff like that.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, the big question is, do we really need governments to start using these tools in a broader sense? So if you think about what's happening at the moment, that there is already a big sphere of law, a big part of law is kind of privatized, and like internal terms of conduct, shareholders agreement, a number of things that are really the law made by the parties, by the group of people that want to kind of do joint endeavor. And in this context, blockchain and DeLaw actually provides the same opportunity. So we want to do something together, fine. We don't need the government to tell us how to behave. We just need the government to give us this big, let's say, kind of the general infrastructure, which kind of already exists, I would say. We just need to have the consent between us and the joint understanding between us, the members of certain group, that we want to use certain tool. And I think this is sufficient. So again, it leads us to education.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I can see how that facilitates processes such as international business, for instance. So it's like if I'm dealing with somebody from a totally different culture, totally different language and law system, it's having these organizations that are decentralized and not really guided through governmental regulations from my side that I have to consider, and from the other side I have to consider as well. It can really facilitate a bit more and expand horizons and opportunities.
Absolutely, yes, I agree.
Yeah. So I wonder now about maybe your personal insights. So based on your experience, maybe what advice would you give to other people, specifically other lawyers who are interested in learning more about the law and decentralized dispute resolution system?
Be less conservative. Lawyers are probably the most conservative group of professionals on this planet. So be less conservative, stay more open, try one tool at a time, make mistakes, learn. you lawyers are so good in learning law, apply the same methods to learning new tools, and you will be really ahead of the competition. I think this is the advice.
I think that's a great advice. So definitely be informed and be open-minded.
Yeah.
And this is general advice also for the public. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about this that maybe you have in your notes or?
Just give me 1 second. I'm just quickly scanning my notes. Yeah, I actually maybe there's one example, not necessarily from my professional life, but from my private life. So I remember like a few years ago, I was buying a car, and this was all kind of the hand-to-hand cash transaction. But I remember I asked the seller if we could have the agreement in place. I'm a lawyer, so I came with the agreement, and I suggested, shall we sign the contract and then have everything on paper? He looked at me weirdly and said, of course not. And I think because this is kind of how these hand-to-hand transactions normally work, there is no contract in place. It's just handing over the property. But I think what the DLaw and blockchain could change with a transaction like this one is that it would be so easy, for instance, to, like with the App Store, go to some marketplace, find the relevant smart contract to guide this transaction, and buy a car with simply having in place the simple smart contract on your mobile phone or wherever that would guarantee that the money is transferred once the ownership is transferred. Then you have a simple method of resolving your dispute if it turns out that the car is broken after you just, I don't know, drive 10 kilometers or so, it turns out it's broken. You have a simple method of resolving the dispute. I mean, it will simplify. Looking in even my own life, it would simplify these things in life, the simple things in life, very much.
Yeah, I can see that that's a very good example of a practical application. And this is so general, like for everybody and at all type of scales, like a personal level transaction, at a family transaction, at a business transaction. So yeah, I can see that. And I've also cherished your enthusiasm and open-mindedness to also encourage people to think about these applications. So I think we come to the end of our interview. Maybe you can tell the audience how can they connect with you and also have a look at your firm that you were telling. So that's the moment to share.
Sure. So the name of my firm is KORDIA Legal, and you can easily find me on LinkedIn, and also you can always get to my website, kordialegal.pl. That's where you will find us, and yeah. That's it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tomasz. It was lovely to meet you, and I hope we can meet again soon.
Thank you, Stephanie. Bye.